are. Oh, yeah,
Here we are. Hello and welcome everyone to our monthly Living in the Flow. My name is Alexis Sersha, and we've got Tanya Castillo, me and my sister Tanya Castillo. We do this wonderful show every month, and we love to present and discuss and share this time with each and every one of you that is watching live now, or perhaps watching later, perhaps many, many years later, because there's a big awakening coming for many, many people. And so they're very, very exciting times. And for us that have been with this for quite a long time, like this, I feel that this last few months has been just diving deep into some kind of really depth of the ocean. That's how it's been for me. So in many ways, I haven't really been very public. I know, Tanya, you've done lots of stuff, but I've sort of been very quiet in many ways, and just allowing this huge change, another change to happen within me. And it's just so amazing this time, because it has been the least, like, even in the past, in the recent past, my mind has been trying to control and, put its hand and put its thought about things. But this time it's just really about letting it just happen. And the mind was just completely staying out of it, didn't even very often realize what is going on, and just doing its own little daily things while underneath this new world is being born within me. But it's been also very, very joyful time, because I'm kind of allowing all these playful parts of myself to come to the forefront, all different kinds of parts, and just dancing and playing and going bushwalking, playing with photography, and just all of these really beautifully creative things, swimming in the cool river, things that give me the joy. And I wake up in the morning with so much joy and this excitement about a day, like, wow, what is going to happen today? Because I've got this it's called almost like this childlike spirit, in a good way, childlike spirit about the adventure that's going on, and at the same time just allowing in a way as I've never allowed before. Like I thought that I was allowing before, but this new era it's allowing it on a whole new level that I've never, done before. And these things are not about, other people or comparing oneself to other people. It's just you with me, like how I was before, how I've known myself before, and how I'm sort of just like this happy little brook in the water, jumping from one rock to the other, the water playing in the sun rays, and just enjoying what life has to offer amidst all this craziness that is happening in the world. And that has also, I've changed perspective on that, because it used to really it touches me deeply now as well. But I can now come with this joyful presence, and things in the world don't actually hurt me, which is great, because then I can radiate and just be myself with other people, just talking about everyday things, and just being in the crowds, and when I enjoy going out, being with people, and people that are not awake, and people that are not, not aware. And it, like, something has changed drastically in the last couple of years in this way, that it doesn't actually hurt me. It used to, when I had this big great awakening and this big great coming back to self, and then when I went into the crowds, I could feel all those kind of conflicting energies, and they would be really abrasive. But not anymore. It's so much has changed, and it amazes me every day just how much has changed, how much I'm changing without any effort, without doing anything, just following my inner impulses. Like, I feel like doing something, and then I just do it. And I feel like dancing, and then I just dance. And it's kind of like all of the things around get sorted out. Like, my place is organized, all of the things within my life are organized, when working. And it seems just so effortless. And this is kind of like a reward, you know, a reward for all the hard work that we've done, because we've journeyed in through the valley of darkness, you know, into the shadow self. And still some things can come up at times, but they are so minute and so fleeting and so okay to deal with, you know, because we've got this vision now, not vision, but being able to just look at things straight in the eye without, you know, fearless, without any fear. And like when I look at, for example, I traverse things and perhaps look at some videos on the internet, I'm not sort of like feel that I have to protect myself in any way. I can go into the depths of what other people are experiencing. Like really, they're experiencing quite deep, painful stuff. And it's kind of like, as our friend Adamus has said, you know, you go and see this dungeons that some people play, and it's like, oh, isn't that interesting, you know, and you can bring your light there, and yet it doesn't hurt, it doesn't torture, it doesn't you know, make my heart go closed at all, because I can look at those energies straight on, face on, without flinching, without any fear, because I know how to deal with them, I know how to dance with them, I know how to transform them, and I know how to bring them back home into neutral. And so this is what's been happening with me. And what about yourself, Tanya?
Okay, so, well, but first of all, the theme being sexuality, menopause, and
Yes.
andropause. Let's not go too far away from that, but
Yeah.
I'll just briefly share. For me, it's been exactly the same, though, of course, then the way it plays out in my reality is different from the way it plays out in yours. And actually, I haven't been very active online, but it just seems like it. So the funny thing is that I spend very few hours online, yet it seems like I'm always there, or there's always something happening, or always a creation of mine coming through. And that's the beautiful thing with energy and creation and allowing this magic flow, is that it is so powerful, and how can I say, it is independent of us needing to do things, that it just happens per se. And the same thing happens in my own reality as I play outside in the rain or in the sun. I really actually enjoy the rain a lot, or inside or whatever. And it's just been a discovery of the intensity of magic. So basically, the rate of manifestation has, I don't know, quadrupled or whatever. And everything comes to me, everything, like I just need to have the idea of something, and boom, it just shows up. Because when it shows up in my perception, it's already in my reality, so to speak. So my mind, it's been a long time that it is very it just serves me all the time, and so that's not an issue. So when things come up, they're coming from my creative expression, from my soul, my whatever, from all of the joint expression of me. And so when the idea arises, then the manifestation is there, like whatever, in the simplest possible ways. And it's been just so beautiful to discover all of that, to play with all of that. It's just like stepping onto sprinkles of stardust all over the place. You know, it's like my ground is stardust, and it just, I just need to blow, and things just happen like that. And so for me, it's been absolutely incredible in all of that sense. And I see things now, things being possible for everyone in a way that I could see before, but not at this in this proportion. So yes, nothing from what's happening around in the world, it doesn't affect me. And at the point that, as you said, I can be in the midst of anyone and everyone, and it's joyful, it's creative, it's a gift to be able to interact with everyone and anyone, and just enjoy it and not have any kind of judgment or perception about wrong or right or whatever. And also to be able to see that person or whoever or that group or whatever, wherever I am at that moment, in its most most grandest, most creative, most alive perspective. So when I look around me, I don't see victims at all. And this ties directly into the theme that we are sharing here around sexuality, at least. And our dearly beloved Tobias, from who channeled through Geoffrey Hoppe for the Crimson Circle and had this created this sexual energy school, and in that there was the theme of the sexual energies virus, which is nothing more, nothing less than playing the game of separation through the belief and the consistent materialization of victimhood and abusive behavior. So within what I call the triangle, victim, abuser, savior, there is this sexual energies virus. And why is it sexual? Because it's about the base chakra, it's about the life force, what brings things to life. And the reason I'm talking about this is that something that's been on the table very strongly in the last 2 weeks, which I find with the people I work with, and which I would like to share here because it's been so evident, is this realization. Many people are realizing the rage, the sometimes only the anger, and other times the rage coming up from inside, and realizing that that was the way to survive. It was the only way to survive within the game of separation, because when one was feeling a victim, so helpless, hopeless, with no way out, feeling depressed, feeling anxious, feeling sad, and all of those things, feeling deprived, then the only way to fuel life force was through the anger. So the anger was a way of firing up through all of that pain and giving a little bit more reprieve, giving a little bit more courage to move on, but always within the defensive mode, always within the this is a dangerous world, always within I need to be alert and in control. So the anger was a part, or has been a part, of being in control and being able to have the necessary energy. Because how does then that energy come? It comes from, first of all, past experiences and the fuel that the emotions of those past experiences bring. So those emotions all together create that anger that then can go out and make life happen. But how? Through getting energy from somewhere. So that has been so evidently on the table that it's been fantastic in these last weeks to witness. I've witnessed such a degree of miracles, of transformational miracles in people, that I'm just in awe. I'm, wow, this is happening. This is finally happening. And it's so simple. It's happening with ease and simplicity. And what is happening is the realization that we are whole, and that, so in each one, that realization of wholeness, and in that being able to embrace that anger, no longer to be afraid of that anger. And many times that anger is not manifest in the way that it's not expressed, it's just lying down there, but it is the fuel. And so being able to embrace that anger in such a way that one realizes its purpose and how useful it's been, and realizing that on the other side there's the victim and the savior, and it's all coming to light. And once one realizes that all of that sexual energies game, that sexual energies virus, it's all about, oh, okay, so that's how it's been so far. That's how I have created my energy so far. But now I can do it a new way. That's what I've been witnessing in people. So um, it's been for me also, I say, like in my integration work that I do, I call myself a miracle assistant because I assist people in becoming their own miracles. And I've witnessed that at a level in these last weeks, and an intensity, and it's been so fast, much faster, these realizations. So if anyone out there is going through this realization, or feeling angry, that's not the end of the road, that's just the end of the past. That is the beginning of something completely new, where once the anger and the victim or the depression or whatever is integrated all into one, then what becomes possible is this crystalline, I call it crystalline joy. So in the morning when I wake up, I just feel this crystalline joy inside of me, and I'm like, oh, I welcome this day. It's so precious, like dewdrops on the leaves and the blades of grass. So it feels like that inside, those sparkling dewdrops all over. And that this can now be possible more and more for more and more people at a rate that was never possible before is just incredible, and related in this case to the sexual energies. Because once all of this is integrated, then that sexual energy is no longer viral. And what does that mean? So it's no longer needy, and then it's no longer lacking. And if it's no longer needy or lacking, it is abundant, and it is cooperative. So what I've witnessed a lot about as well is this ease of cooperation. This ease of cooperation is also a great big shift that's going on all over. And I mean, that's why in so many places there is also war and all of that stuff coming up, a lot of darkness coming up, a lot of darkness on the table. But just because, just like inside of us, things need to shake up, and that anger which is playing out inside individuals is also playing out outside. It just all needs to come out into the open, so then it can implode. And this new consciousness, this new awareness, where we create not in a viral way, but in a new energy way. So we create energy from within, that sparkling crystalline joy. And it's right here, and I'm just super super happy about it. And I've even got this
Oh,
little kitty,
wow.
which I call Twinkle, that showed
Oh,
up.
what a cute one.
He showed up at the end of October here, all of a sudden on a weekend, and he just declared, this is my
Mm,
place. And he's this bubbling joy, this
mm,
crystalline, kind of fearless, loving possibility. It's this. So yeah. Then we can go further into the theme. So that's how it's been for me.
But it's very similar. Like when
It
you look at
is
it, we
completely,
just
completely.
explain it in different words,
It's
in
so
our
much
own
the same
words.
thing.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
so much the same thing.
Yeah, and so
That's
now
what I thought when I was listening to you. I said, yeah, we're living the same thing.
exactly. And because, there are these general energies, how people sort of say, oh, that person is repeating another person's or maybe copying whatever, but it actually, and within on earth, there are generalized energies and generalized themes that people tap into. So they bubble up, same themes at the same time, bubble up in different places. And it's just that people experience them in a different way. And so back to our theme. So with this, like as women, and menopause and all of these things, we feel, I feel myself in many ways in this way also as a pioneer. I've always been an experimenter, and so I've experimented with medical things. So even before I could put to words, I sort of looked at things that were happening. Let's say, how people say, oh, you have to go to a doctor every once a year and have a checkup if you're healthy and stuff. And these kind of things to me didn't never work. So there are a lot of things that, my dear people that do the right thing get shocked when I say, okay, I have actually never gone and done these things. There are some things that I've just thought, okay, this is not it. I'm not going to do it. And it wasn't like on a purpose that I've done. It just was a natural thing to me. And also the examples I had, for example, within my family, my grandma, who passed away, let's say at 96, she's never been to a doctor in her life. She's only been once to a hospital 2 days before she passed on. That was it. And she lived to 96, and stuff. So I have very different kind of ideas. My other family were into herbal. So, and this is not to say, what people should do, because people sort of should do what they believe. So for example, let's say, that's right. Yeah. If they believe in medicine, they should do that because that will work for them, because that's what believes and that's what they believe in. So being a creator is that you create what you believe, what you radiate. And so the change from, let's say, depending on things outside of yourself, which very often also are helpful, to being a more integrated person that actually creates from what feels like from the inside. It's actually gradual, because you have to keep, for some people, you have to keep changing your beliefs, and then you can actually go to the next level. Like, for example, let's say, like when I go into the wilderness, I didn't from day one dare to go where I go now, but it was like year after year, okay, now I know this, now this has happened and I can go further. But I wouldn't say that, oh, you who are first time going for a bushwalk, go here. No, because you have, it's that gradual. You keep changing and you change your beliefs, and you can do this different kind of things. So to do with our theme, let's say menopause, like with sexuality and with pills and with stuff like that. I've never taken a pill. I've actually taken it once. I went to, a gynecologist, taken it once, and I thought, what, this isn't my life. This is not what I'm going to do for the rest of my 30-40 years. I'm not going to take some pill every night. It's just not part of me. And I didn't. And I used other things as a contraception, and I've had great time. And it was always like, oh, wow, if a child did happen, it would happen. It wasn't like, okay, I have to do it. But all I'm saying is that I have actually experimented in a big way with things. And so even like with every stage of life that I happen upon, I experiment and do things differently. And I know what the mass consciousness believes. And so when for example, my body entered a menopause, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to have issues with that. And there were a little bit of issues, but I don't have any problems. Actually, what's happened through the last few years, it's been like I've rediscovered a new freedom, a new way of being, like being this sort of a wise, older woman, a crone that I feel myself. And all of that, giving birth and all of that has gone from my agenda. And there's so much more that comes out of this. And I've rediscovered my new desire to play with men, with a guy I just recently had like about 6 months relationship. with a guy, and it was wonderful. It's been like the most free relationship that I've ever had in my whole life, because so and that has to do with a lot of with so many things, but also just with the way I've said that, okay, this menopause, it's actually going to be freeing for me. So it just all has to do, and then the body follows. It all has to do with your belief system and how you relate to the body. That's what I find. That's what I believe in, and then my body follows. And so, for example, with all of this new way of being, how I've not had, like nothing major. Last decade, I've not had a flu. I've not had corona. I've not had even a cold. I've not had even a runny nose, because I've taken it upon myself to believe that my body and I cooperate, and my body and I know how to dance, and my body knows how to bring in the light body. My body has space, has created space to play in this new way, to be this vessel for the soul to come in. And my body responds to that. And I've let go so much of these ideas of what I should look like, how I should be, and just play and enjoy my body, enjoy it in nature, enjoy it dancing, enjoying with other people. And when even, let's say, for example, being with another person, has there have been different stages throughout my awakening. There was a time, there were a few years when I thought, when I was integrating that inner masculine and feminine, when I thought, wow, I will never want to have sex with another person, or I will never want to go out with a guy, with nobody in that way before, because I couldn't stand anyone touching me. And then all of a sudden, all of this came back in a new way, in a younger way, in a refreshing way. So if you asked me a few years ago, what certain things, what I will be doing, I would give a different answer. And that's also one of the things to actually be okay with, is this being okay with oneself constantly changing and changing perspective. So, for example, let's say 3 years ago, someone said, oh, do you ever see yourself in a relationship? I would say, definitely not. I can't even stand anyone touching me. And then all of a sudden, one day I woke up and I thought, wow, I actually am starting to feel these feelings again. And then, like you said, when you choose something, a guy appeared, and it all just was very natural and very beautiful and very relaxing. And so all of these things just really depend on your inner self, how you believe, how you perceive things. I choose to live this life, the last lifetime, in this way, in adventure, as an exciting thing. And that's how I deeply then resonate with those kind of words. And then everything in my life then expresses that, including all of the medical things that, somehow we are living in this parallel world more and more, that nothing that the mass consciousness goes through touches us in a negative way. And I've mentioned that with the coronavirus, and the lockdowns that I didn't have, and people around me did have, but just things that happened without me even worrying. It just, all of a sudden, I got like this part-time job somewhere, and all of a sudden I was an essential worker, and all of a sudden I had access to, with that card, freedom to go around. I had access to all the toilet paper I wanted as an essential work. All of these kind of things that I didn't even need to worry about. Another thing that I've noticed is, for example, as I enter different kind of age stage, I find that things free up drastically. So, for example, and I didn't actually realize that, but it just all has to do with the song of your soul, and these practical implications of you singing with your soul. And that happens even before, let's say, you finally awake or realize yourself. So it was only recently that I realized, for example, let's say I grew up in a very, very different kind of energy. So I don't know if people know, I grew up in a country called Yugoslavia. It was communist. There was still Cold War, and the Berlin Wall, and all of that existed at that time. And yet our country, even though it was communist, it was free. The passport, you could go any country in the world, even more. There was freedom of travel. There were tourists, there were people traveling on that hippie road through our country and stuff like that. So even though there was communism, where I lived, the communism was very free. And so everywhere that I went, like that, there was this incredible freedom. And even though I didn't need it, for example, let's say how there are people, for example, let's say going about the prohibition of abortion and all of these kind of things, in every country that I lived, it was free to have. And the thing is, being that I've had lots of lifetimes, I never had to utilize those services. And yet in every stage of life, that country or place where I lived was open, was much freer. And even though I didn't need those services, the feeling that those things are available is that feeling of freedom, is that feeling of being supported by life, is that freedom of being that that the services are there if you need them. And another one, for example, now that I'm sort of becoming older, is that, for example, in our country, and I didn't even think that was possible, let's say now you have all of a sudden from next year assisted euthanasia. And because I'm getting older and I'm not sort of thinking about leaving, but it just gives people the dignity of and choice, much more choice, and the feeling of that freedom and being supported in life. But all of these kind of things is incredible compared to, let's say, some places in the world where that doesn't happen. And so we have this incredible, without even thinking, we have this incredible impact on the places we live if we allow ourselves to really dance. And the thing is, it doesn't need any going out on protest or anything like that. It is just simply within oneself, allow saying no to certain things and then really choosing something else. Because this is one of the attributes I always had, is like I always went in this way, black and white. So if I believe this, and if I say no to something, then the other thing has to work, or otherwise I'll let it go. And that is like, I noticed that a lot of some people that they say, oh, why isn't this working for me? Why isn't this working for me? Because they are not that 100% committed to their new belief. You see, when you are committed to the song of your soul, to your radiance, to your inner, whatever you call it, it cannot but create. And it creates in a small way, meaning like in your immediate environment, and it also creates in a society, it also creates in a country that you live in, so. And but it just needs that kind of audacity, it needs that kind of commitment, that kind of, that's it, there is no other way. It's freedom, and like, then you go for it. And it is just quite incredible to have these insights to see how things work, and it has to do all with being the creator. And for anyone, and like you said, Tanya, before, coming together as a whole, it has to do with the feminine dancing, it has to do with the masculine coming together, the divine feminine and divine masculine within, and dancing in this beautiful, incredible, love-filled dance that happens when you become whole. And there's just nothing then that can stop that, and everything reflects back as to who you are.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so, absolutely everything you've shared, absolutely. And I'd like to go back to um, the fact that for me it's also I'm a bit of a rebel when it comes to going by the norm, but not a rebel in the way that I will sort of go out and shout in the streets. I just choose my own way and go ahead with it. So whatever I feel is for me, I just live by that. And regarding health, I too have not been into current normal regular medicine, so much so that every 3 years or so I get a call from the local health system asking if I still want to have the doctor, you know, because we have a family doctor. It's in social in countries where we have social security, it works like that. Because I mean, I know it works differently in different countries, but here you everyone every citizen has a right to have a family doctor. But because I never go there, they just check, you know, they say, yeah, okay, you know, just keep it there. I mean, who knows? I might need to go and ask for some blood tests or whatever, but it hasn't happened. And one thing that is mandatory, well, not mandatory because we always have the choice, is, for instance, to have your breast tested every year after you're 40 or whatever, and to do the pap smear and to all of these things. So I do none of that. And the less I do, the healthier I am. And the funny thing around also about around menstruation and menstruation ceasing is what I found along my journey as I evolved as a woman. And I must say, I was very, very stuck sexually many years ago. So I had a lot of issues when it comes to relating sexually. Not that I wasn't. I was actually very sexually driven, and I needed to have that in my life. Until the point where I didn't, or where I rejected it. So it was sort of either exactly one way or the opposite. And I used to be allergic to cats, and I realized that that allergy had to do with my sexuality. And as I was integrating and transforming my relationship with my own body and my relationship with another sexually, the allergy started decreasing and decreasing to the point where I now have a cat and I am absolutely not allergic. So this cat came up and somehow knew I'm not allergic to cats anymore. Anyway, so the way I've dealt with my health issues, and I must say I did have many. I haven't had health issues in the last decade, but I mean, before that, I used to have a lot of health issues, all sorts of health issues. And the way I dealt with them was even when I wasn't what one can call spiritually awakened, was always finding a way in my behavior or in whatever I was doing to changing that in order to support my body. So even when I wasn't aware that that's exactly what I was supposed to do, that's what I was doing. And after I became aware of all of that, of course, much more. So just like Alexis pointed out, it's not about whether it's good or not to take medicine or go to the doctor. It's not about that. It's just my thing. It's been my thing. Actually, it's interesting because I came in with a kind of a disorder, one could say, which doesn't allow me to take vaccines. So when I was a child, like a baby, a newborn, and they gave me a few shots, and then they realized that I actually couldn't take in any vaccines because my immune system was hyperactive, so it immediately attacked the agent that was being injected, and so that could kill me. So therefore they this was a long time ago, yeah. So they said, you know, please don't give your baby any vaccines anymore, no more, because you can kill her. And so even that, I mean, I came in with this aversion to medication right away, right from the word go. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong or right with vaccines. It's just the way I came in. I was wired that way already before I came in. It's like, you know, when I go into this lifetime, I'm gonna have to understand, or in a way become friends with this body, and the way was to um, avoid all sorts of medication, so that I had to learn how to become the best friend of this physical vessel that houses my essence, or the wholeness of me, the divine human that I am. And regarding menstruation, many people have all sorts of beliefs around menstruation, and you can do this and you can't do that and whatever. And also a lot of discomfort. It causes a lot of pain to many women. And what I can offer regarding that is really that the pain and all of that is also related to a lot of emotional issues and a lot of sexual blockages, um, a lot of pain and victimhood regarding our position as a female in society and towards a male or a female. It doesn't matter, whatever our choice is in terms of sexual relationship. But it is very, very much related to the woman, the wound of the woman, and all of the emotions that are within that. So I invite anyone who feels a lot of pain during your menstruation to really go deeper, if you would like, to allow yourself to explore a little bit more of those emotions, of those fears, of those resistances to opening up more. And because the time now is so inviting for that. I mean, the energies on earth, the frequencies that are available now, can provide you with a safe space now, like never before, to dive into the most painful issues. And once those are all taken care of, for sure the menstruation will become just the most natural thing. It happens, it comes, it goes, and it's just that, with no issues, no premenstrual syndromes and all of that stuff that we're so accustomed to believing has to be so. It just becomes such of, oh, yeah, I'm going through PMS. Okay, right. And we just believe that that's the way it's supposed to be, because it's coined with normalcy. And what if it doesn't have to be that way? What if there is no PMS, if you have really made the most of each menstruation within diving into the emotions? Because if there is PMS, then that's the doorway, that's the opening to dive within and go deeper, to integrate, to embrace all of those issues. And then what happens with the menstruation is that it becomes like an enlightening doorway. Each time it comes, it's a relief, it's an opening, it's a joy. It's even sexual arousal is higher during that period. And once you let go of all of the, oh my god, I can't have intercourse while I've got my period because it's all messy and all that. Well, once you get past all of these beliefs, you can enjoy it. Well, and this is the way I experience all of those shifts, until coming into the time where the periods started to decrease, and their frequency and all of that. And I'd like to mention the hot flashes that everyone complains about. Actually, I never saw them in that way, because for me, whenever I feel hot, it's an energy increment. It's like an enlightening doorway. So that feeling of intense heat in the body, always, even before I ever came into, I don't have hot flashes per se, because I've always had them, so to speak, in the sense that whenever the creative energy gets very strong inside of us, and there's some kind of awareness that is coming forward, like you're birthing a new awareness, and there's new doorways of perception, and there's new energy growing in the body, there's that hot flash. So those hot flashes were happening for me long before, well, very long before menopause ever came to be. So they haven't intensified or diminished. It's just the same kind of this heat that forms in the body always means an opening of perception, when your energy is rising within me. And another thing I've noticed is that, just like you shared, Alexis, is so liberating coming into this time where there is no more menstruation, and therefore there's no need for contraception or a concern about contraception if we don't want to have any more kids. And that is really liberating. And also another thing that I notice, some women complain about being too dry while going through
I was
menopause,
gonna
and
mention that too.
I actually experienced the opposite. I'm like,
Me
oh
too.
well,
Me
there is
too. Yeah.
no problem with lubrication at
No.
all. The problem with lubrication that these ladies experience, and also the burning in the vagina and all of that stuff, is a burning sensation in the vagina will always mean anger. So please, if you can, dive into that burning feeling, that discomfort, and find out, what is it? What is that anger? What is lying there? And if it's dry, well, it's dry. It has no life, right? So why? What are you closing yourself to? As opposed to what could you be opening up more for. And another thing I notice with the advent of menopause is rejuvenation. It's incredible. I mean, it feels like I'm 10 years younger. And
And
so it's,
freer,
yes,
so freer.
exactly. Younger, freer, and wiser. And the wiser part is, like, for me, it's been like these huge doorways of enlightening awareness coming forth at a rate that is incredible. So what I feel and sense that's been covered up and never really revealed about menopause is that it is not a time where a woman gets old and cranky and her body just starts falling apart. No, it's absolutely the opposite. It's a new lease of life where now you have another level of freedom because you don't have the same constraints you had before. You
And
don't
also
have
on your another level of authority,
Yes,
authority of
exactly.
life, because it comes
Right.
with that wisdom and being a
Maturity.
crone. That's right.
It
Yeah.
comes with the maturity.
Yeah.
So it's a new level of authority, sovereignty, maturity, awareness, wisdom, and rejuvenation and freedom. So it's actually a time that, if each woman could be receiving and embracing it with an open heart, it would be absolutely amazing for everyone, because it is not what it's been cut out to be. But the thing is, if one gets to menopause without having dealt with all of those emotional issues, with the wound of the feminine, and here it's very clearly the feminine, because the feminine has menstruation, and so, I mean, the feminine body. So without having dealt with all of those wounds, yes, it can be really excruciatingly uncomfortable and all of those things. Because why? It's the same thing like when we're integrating. For instance, when there's a huge rush of light energy, when there's a huge rush of crystalline energy coming in, and because there's been an opening inside, and we've done a lot of integration in that moment, what happens is that if there's any dark parts of us lying in the corner still needing attention and love, they will just boom come all at once. And then it seems like many times when there's a huge rush of lightness, there also comes a huge rush of darkness because it's not been yet acknowledged, right? And so it's exactly the same thing when menopause comes about, and it's a huge rush of enlightening awareness. But if there's a lot of stuff lying and lurking around in the dark recesses of our consciousness that has not been addressed, it will just create a huge ball of discomfort and pain and all of those things. So it's better to address all of that before arriving at this wonderful, liberating time, so that then it can be smooth and simple and amazing as it is. I mean, to me, it's been wow. Nobody ever told me this. I mean, I never knew this was so. And of course, just like you, I never believed there was going to be any trouble with it anyway. So, of course, it's not been trouble at all. But the thing is, the things I've discovered in the experience of it are so different from what everyone is talking about. So it's like, oh my God, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. Let's share about it, let's share something different.
And for me, it's very so similar to what you were saying, like with the lubrication, it's actually much better. Orgasm, much better, much
Oh,
more
yeah,
intense,
let's even.
very quick. It, like if I want, it's
Yeah.
all of these things, and people don't talk about this. And like you mentioned, and also hot flashes, I don't know what they are because I always felt on fire. That
Yeah.
passion, like before the last awakening, I felt like I was burning inside, and it was really
Mm-hmm.
very uncomfortable. But now it just is that passion, that so maybe that's what it is, but that creative fire. And to do with menstruation, I've also noticed even before that I was actually just much more open to what is really going on. And I think that's what people mistakenly call PMS, because what happens
Yeah.
is that as a woman, you can't hide behind the mask. So
Mm-hmm.
normally in normal life, in mass consciousness, people are supposed to put on a mask, and then you pretend all these things don't get on your nerves, and that has to do because then you can go to a crappy job, you can put up with a crappy relationship or marriage, or you can be abused, you can put up with all of these things. But then when you have period, all of that is gone, and
Comes up.
that's why then you are much more cranky. But you're not cranky because it's some kind of mysterious PMS symptom, but it is
Yeah.
just simply you don't have that barrier between who you really are and what you really feel. And the mask kind of goes away, and that's what they call your real you, they call PMS. And the thing is, of
Mm-hmm.
course, you are maybe much more explosive because you're explosive because there's so much accumulation of all of
Mm-hmm.
these
And
things that one.
sensitivity. You
That's
become more
right.
sensitive.
That's right. And but like you, for me, was like, yeah, the sex can be good. That's why it's cool if you have access in those times to some wild rivers, because then there's not as much mess when you don't have to clean up some practical things. but to those that are already experiencing maybe all of these symptoms, like this is just that are that age, because not everyone is before the men all of these times. You can do what the main thing is to bring peace inside of yourself. So for me, it's been quite a very hard journey, very challenging journey with this, because I was born, like when a Catholic, and automatically, as all of those constrictions and restrictions, and there's something wrong with being a woman. And like when I was growing up, I was told, no, you can't do this because you're a woman, or there were so many restrictions put on.
Yeah.
And initially, when I was little, I loved men. I had my first friend was a guy, like a couple of years older. And then there was a time when I experienced incredible wounding and betrayals by guys. And so I really turned kind of against men in many ways, and I couldn't trust them. And because I was surrounded by wounded men and wounded women, And then it was, of course, this journey, a hard journey with this, when you're wounded on the inside and you keep attracting wounded men or all of these kind of things, you know. It's like, no, but I knew what kind of relationship that I wanted, but I couldn't, because the kind of guy that I wanted, and I knew that there is a dream guy, I couldn't get, because I was a wounded woman. And as a wounded woman, I was attracting a wounded man, someone, you know. So it's kind of like you're trapped in this kind of circle. And many times, like, I hear, you know, women will say, well, you know, they keep falling for the same type of guy, and they go into, like, you know, and this is not in spiritual circles, like, I mean, in a mass consciousness, and they go, wow, you know, and this guy is stalking me when I try to leave, and they have all these kind of violence relationships and stuff, and they say, but I didn't know he was like that before. And it's like, no, this is the fifth guy that is the same. So you know exactly that he's like that before unconsciously. You recognize this. That's why you go with him. You know, that's why you know exactly who to pick. You know, but it has to do with what we find attractive when we're wounded. That's what we find attractive, and we attract that. And so there's a huge journey to release that, like you were talking about, that sexual energy virus. And it's not pretty and it's not easy. And then when it all moves from outside on the inside, when you realize, oh my gosh, this wounded male lives inside of me, you
Yeah.
know, this wounded female lives inside of me, and then you have to deal with that. But it's a very natural process, and it's not easy, you know, very often, because you then discover your wounded heart, and it hurts like hell, you know,
Yeah.
night after night, when you're in those depths of integration, when you're walking through that
It
death
is hellish.
valley. It's very, very hellish, but at the same time you have help. Like, you have this at the same time. When you're traveling, you have these incredible experiences with your soul. So you can, and you're mesmerized. I was mesmerized by soul, so I always wanted more and more. And the more you want to
Yeah.
feel your soul, the more it stirs up all of these things, until that time when all of a sudden there came a day. And I remember I was on a big walk on the beach, and all of a sudden I became aware of my divine masculine side. And it was just the most beautiful, because what I used to think, that image, that idealism of a masculine, you know, that you look in the movies and it's like, oh my gosh, that is just so beautiful. That was actually the knowingness, the feeling of my masculine. What I idealize actually is what my divine whole masculine is. And then it took, you know, playing with that. And then it took a while, and all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, this is what my feminine is. So it was a very clear, for me, there were very clear and defined moments when I had that aha moment for both. And then for a while, there was four. There was a wounded masculine, wounded feminine, and then that whole and whole, until this wounded integrated and healed and released. And like you said, the feminine had this incredible rage that had to be dealt with. You know, sometimes there was so much rage. And I remember I was on a walk and I thought, oh my gosh, how do I deal with this? And somehow with the inner help, you know how to. I just found ways to deal with it. I walked a lot, and, you know, screamed in the bush, and all of some people beat the pillow and stuff, because rage and anger from that is accumulated, that is not current, because like when you first touch it, it is out of proportion, and maybe something triggers it, and you think, why is this triggered my rage in such a big way? It's out of proportion because you have so much of it accumulated. And then as you work with it and you release it, whether you go and punch bag in a gym or whatever it is that you do, anger and rage needs physical expression, and find ways to deal with that, or you climb to the top of the mountain or something. And then as you are actually releasing and releasing that, then your anger becomes current, meaning that if someone does something in that moment, you can react, you can feel anger, but it's just saying to you, no, I don't feel this is not okay to do. But it is very proportionate and small and tiny and relatable to that moment, and you deal with it and you move on. It's not that accumulated huge volcano from the past. That's what I found. And so slowly and slowly it just I fell in love with that divine masculine. I fell in love with my divine feminine, and I could play with that. And within those divine masculine and feminine, there are all different layers or timelines. There is a baby in each. There is a toddler, there is when they go through puberty, when they get awakened in their sexual, and this whether I felt I'm not a male in this lifetime, but I can feel it from my other lifetimes, which are also now where I am a male, or so I can feel all of that. And then in the 20s, 30s, the middle age, the menopause, and also the male pause. And so because I believe that males also go through their own menopause. So there are all, and then there is a crone in both the elder of a male and the elder of a female. So all of these parts, they come and dance together, and I can focus on them, and I can sort of feel all the different beautiful, incredible feelings of a father, of a mother. It's all on the inside. And this is what we mean when we say androgynous, that inside and as a whole, it's all of these parts of me dancing as a whole. And it's not anymore now that I have to really identify, oh, I'm a male, I'm a female, whether these parts, but they all are dancing in as one, meaning that they're not the same, but they're dancing in this cooperation. They are cooperating. They are invoking these incredible feelings during the day that I experience all sorts. I can experience feelings of a toddler. I can experience feelings of a teenager, male or a female. And it's just this kind of incredible dance of being androgynous, and at the same time, which is very, because let's say a year ago I was wondering, so where am I going with this? What happens? So does that mean that I cannot have a relationship? But it actually does. It turned out that all of a sudden I was able to have a relationship with a guy, and he wasn't even spiritual. He was just naturally into nature, and so felt comfortable with his body and stuff. And it was just so incredibly beautiful, because now I could relate to him on a whole level, and I could relate to him as him being a male, much more whole, not a wounded. And I could relate to him, bring out my own feminine parts, whole parts, not any of that crappy wounded stuff that used to be, and even in the sexuality, because like you, Tanya, I too have had to work through deep sexual issues that it feels like they weren't mine. It's like we were working in this collective deep sexual issues of repression, of not feeling good with the body. I mean, look at the mass consciousness, the craziness of the imagery that gets put on the men and female, men and women, this idealistic crazy imagery, how body's supposed to be and stuff like that. So it's not that we're here. It's not that I'm here now because I felt everything. I felt all of the constrictions and restrictions and crazy stuff from the mass consciousness. But it's just that, again, it's just choosing, no, there must be a better way. I knew there is a better way. I knew there is a whole way. And you just keep doing what needs to be done. Regardless of where you are, whether you're post-menopause, pre-menopause, during menopause, it's not any too late. And then you come to this incredible heaven inside. Heaven, there's Eden on the inside of you, and you can have male and female, or whether you identify as just whole, however you want to play from then on. It just becomes a play, like that act. It's like, okay, so who am I going to play with? Am I going to be playful? Am I going to be more, like play as a 30-year-old today? You can, because you just bring that part freely and easily, while at the same time, I know that I'm a mature woman of a certain, so it's this incredible freedom to play however you want to play. And with all of these unbridled free ways of being in your body and playing with another person, and nothing has to be forced. Like if you're in that stage where you still feel you're deep into integration and you feel like, wow, no one touched me, don't feel like you have to always have a relationship. And some other people have a different way, because some other people are married throughout this whole, journey. So like whatever happens, it's okay. And you find ways within that life that you live, because your soul self knows exactly your life, and it knows what it wants to bring to wisdom, what it wants to experience. So everyone is perfectly where they're supposed to be. It's not that you have to forcibly change. Oh, look, that person's doing that way, so I have to do it that way. No, just keep allowing that wisdom and your own inner knowingness and your own inner transformation and inner change to happen, to bring you, to allow that wholeness rather to express itself through you.
Yes, again, yes, 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 yes. All of this that you have shared, I absolutely relate to it. Going back to my experience of when I realized that there was something like a feminine and a masculine inside. So my mom is someone who is really angry at men, and so she was always throughout while I was growing up, always saying men are this, men are that, you can't trust them, so on and so forth. And I grew up with that, and so my masculine was actually when I went looking for him, he didn't exist in a visible way. I'd shut him down in a dark well, a place where he could not speak or even interfere in any way. So the feminine was playing out both roles, but through a wounded, angry, separate kind of perspective. And the masculine was just voiceless and totally inexistent in terms of being allowed to express. And then why? Because when I invited the masculine to come out of that dark hole, I realized it was what's called the wound of Adam. What was this huge guilt and shame for all of the pain that I had lived and caused as a male or within my masculine energy. And so, this huge pain of that guilt, of that burden of having hurt so much, um, just all flooded me at once. And I realized, oh, okay. But at the same time, there was the divine masculine was showing up inside of me, showing itself as such a stable, wise, really just, whoa, this is it. And the feminine, so she was um, not trusting the masculine at all. She was hurt, of course, as well, and rageful, and she thought she had it all together and she didn't need him at all, and so on. Well, as this started coming up, then the divine feminine started showing up, and oh my god, she was just so graceful and creative and luminous and beautiful and all of these things. And so the divine masculine and feminine started showing up precisely at the same time I was becoming aware of the wounded masculine and feminine. So just like you were experiencing, and then through that it was easier because there was a kind of a base point where these parts, these wounds could come back to into my soul, into my wholeness. And when it all fell together, when it all fell into place, all of a sudden the feminine and masculine were no longer something I could put my finger on as this is feminine and this is masculine. It just became like a huge blend. just like the dark and the light inside of me, a blend, um, not one or the other. So either at one point it will be more of this, at another point it will be more of that, but it's a blend. There is no separation between one and the other. There is no one and the other. It's all a blend. And the interesting thing in that was being able then, with that blend, to completely release any need for sex. And after being able to not need it at all, now not in rejection of I don't want it, don't touch me, but in oh, now I don't need it, I experienced such a level of freedom that it's incredible, because I can have fun and enjoy my sexuality with another, and it's extremely intense, really, really, really intense. But I can also be perfectly happy and fine when I'm not experiencing any of that. So it's also a different level of freedom. And regarding men's, what's called andropause, um, uh, I witness many men going through that phase, and it also can be challenging. Challenging biologically and, of course, emotionally. But basically, again, it's the same invitation to really go into what are those emotions, what is hidden there, what is the gift, because there is always a gift in any discomfort. There is no such thing as discomfort that does not bring a gift. So that's one of the beauties of being in a physical body, is that it is so clear in its communication. And if we pay attention to it, we can easily then just realize what's there and become aware and transcend it. And you've said everything else that I might want to say around this. And other than, once this blend happens, once this blend inside becomes the 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 way we manifest, then what happens outside is always just simply a reflection of that blend. And so that doesn't mean that there are not people that you come across that are not one thing or another or whatever. It means, and the reason I'm referring this is that it just means that it doesn't affect you. So when we say that the way we feel inside and the way our energies are playing out outside is reflected from that, from who and what we are reflecting in the moment, it doesn't mean that we'd never come across anyone that is not so and so or whatever stuff that is disintegrated or so. It means that it doesn't affect us, and so we can gracefully interact with any of that without going into any kind of imbalance. And if it is so how can I say, sometimes it happens that there are, of course, because we live in a world that lives within the sexual energies virus and within all of this duality, there are moments where it does sometimes, for me, the trigger is whenever I feel that virus wanting to sort of, coming to suck some energy, I'm just so like, no, no way. You're That's not coming in here. And there I feel this kind of, it's not an anger per se, like a rage or anything. It's kind of a firmness, It's like it just bubbles up like, no. And so it's just such a firm no. And so it's easy to deflect any kind of energies that might want to come and check out your reality, because your reality just becomes so yummy that it's like, let's go and check that out. but it's not possible. It can't be checked out by any other energies that are not in alignment with yours, simply because your no is so firm from inside that it just simply deflects anything and everything that might want to come and check out what's going on. On the other hand, it's a good thing that those things are wanting to come and check out what's going on, because that is a doorway. That is a doorway to opening up to new possibilities. So those energies, those pieces of consciousness that are somehow unloved or whatever around in the landscape, not necessarily yours but out there, when they come and check you out, it's because there is at some level some kind of a calling, some kind of a curiosity to see, is it possible? And so it's not something to be afraid of, even if like anything that would frighten you in the past approaches you now, within a new level of consciousness. It's not to be scared or frightened by, because first of all, it cannot affect you, it cannot taint or distort your reality, and it's just because you're shining so bright that it's causing a few other light bulbs to switch on out there, and that curiosity is healthy because it opens up new possibilities. And those new possibilities also benefit us. It benefits me, you, everyone. Why? Because the more the reality around us is balanced, the more opportunities there are, right? The easier and more graceful it becomes, the less closed doors they are. So we all get to benefit from there being these openings of curiosity within what seems to be dark energies, what seems to be imbalances, and so on, playing out in our reality. So once we've walked through that valley of darkness, through that hellish kind of thing, nothing really scares us. So we're not afraid of dark energies coming to check us out at all, because we know them. We are so acquainted with those energies. We have befriended them. They have become our treasure. Now they do not live in the darkness anymore, so they don't exist anymore inside of us, but we know them, so there's nothing to fear. And in this, and the reason I'm sharing this is that some people, for instance, might be in a relationship in this moment and going through all of this awareness, these openings of consciousness and all that, and sometimes the relationship might be quite heavy or hard to deal with and all that. And though it's true that the way we feel also influences the people around us, it is also true that each person around us has the choice of which way they want to go. So they might not change all that much. And in that moment, then it's up to each one of us to choose. Okay, so at this point where I'm at in my journey, do I choose to stay in this relationship or do I choose to leave it? But never because, in order to go through your not only awakening but realization and all of that, that you need to not be in the same relationship you've been in for 30 years or 20 or whatever. No, it's not a prerequisite that you have to be single or living alone in order to be going through your own journey. What is a prerequisite is that you are respecting yourself, and that is essential. So each moment is always a question of realizing, okay, is this kind and loving towards myself? And if you can find the space, if this relationship is not heavily burdensome and abusive and all of that, if it's none of that, and even though you might be on this journey and your partner isn't at all, you still have a lot of opportunity to be together and expand together. And actually, for me, I found that in relationships, I've grown so much faster. So it has been the relationships themselves that have triggered my own growth over and over and over again. So I thank each and every single man I've had in my life, no matter what we lived together, because it just was like fuel to move faster through my own issues. And therefore, really, it's not about being or not being in a relationship, it's about your relationship with yourself, respecting yourself, and then choosing moment to moment. And I've seen such beautiful things happen also with people I relate to and work with, that they thought many times thought, this relationship is not going to work and so on. And then all of a sudden a new lease of life comes into that relationship. They find love in a new way they never experienced before, and so on. So this is possible, totally possible. Of course, it's true that what I've seen most is divorces, but it doesn't mean that it has to be that
Mm,
way. So it's really a question of how we're relating to
mm,
ourselves and respecting ourselves. And it is possible also to be in a relationship, and if there is a level of understanding between both of you when you're going through that phase that you don't want anyone to touch you, where you're going through that integration of all of the sexual wounds and all that, if the person that is with you is supposed to be with you, or if there is this kinship, this friendship, this closeness, they will understand. They will understand and respect where you are
mm,
at that moment, in the same way that probably you will or would understand the other person's journey. So, and if they don't, well, yeah, well, think twice. Is it a relationship you
mm,
want to be in? It's just like, it's just like a friendship. When people can't accept you in each stage of your evolution, then it's maybe time for there to be new people in your life, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong or right. So we don't go and get um, not validation from anyone on our journey, because the only place to get validation is really from our own inner sense of well-being and our own capacity to open up to even more love within ourselves. And everything else then will adjust. And sometimes we need to take action for those adjustments to happen. But the action is always smooth when it's
mm,
coming from our soul's guidance. And yeah, that's about all around this, that I feel we've really covered this in such a simple yet profound way.
mm. And I agree with everything that you've said, and I've experienced it. It's amazing again how we've experienced things in such a similar way, even though our stories are very different. And like just what you've just said, I would like to also add to that. Yes, when completions happen, whether they're also temporary, they can be temporary, but at that time they feel they're final. Let's say you come to a breaking point between your partner and yourself, or a friend, or job, or whatever it is. And it can be that perhaps it may surprise you, a year later you come back together again. That's the thing with this journey, you never know.
Yeah,
There is no finality
there
in
are no
this way.
closed doors.
There, and all of the people, yeah, they come back. But what I found is that when I travel with my soul present, it is this graceful ending, because it's not like that. It's not that, because it's different from the mind ending. In a mind ending, I would have to sort of say, okay, so I see this is very damaging to me, I have to end this. But all of my emotional and feeling space is not there. So I would have to force it, discipline it, do those steps it, but when you travel with the soul, when I come to the ending, it's all of me is finished and ready. It's finished with what was, and it's ready for the new. So it's much less painful. And still, yes, I experience, let's say, sadness or some grief and things.
Yeah.
But because my whole self is ready for new beginning and is finished with what was, it is so much smoother, and it's not at the depth, it's not painful at all to end. It's because you're ready, and all of a sudden everything around me is ready. Either new people are there to come in, or whatever situations are there to come in. It's all very whole. It always works in this kind of really whole way. And then for everyone also, wherever you are, like we talked about, like for example, we've both of us experienced everything. Like for example, my period's always been so extremely painful because I had so many blockages there. And some of the things don't resolve, like it's okay to just change your relationship with something, and it becomes okay. How can I say? And you just know that it's there. It might resolve, it will all resolve in its own time, in its own time. So it's mainly just working with this flow, with biology, with all of these currents, with what is happening in the world, with how the energies are aligned, the planets, everything is supportive, everything is connected in this way, and everything is your energy. And so if you play with it, when you're more and more open to its flow, and it will show you, whether through some painful experiences, or whether whether you are already in this grace and ease, or whether you are just experiencing one of those days where everything goes wrong, which still does, because as long as we are within the mass, living alongside the mass consciousness, sometimes we just have those crappy days, but you know that this too shall pass, this too will end, and tomorrow they will come into your now moment, and it's another day, another opportunity for the discoveries, for this growth, for this beautiful unfoldment. And the um, most precious or delicious or delightful things are these discoveries of your inner self. Like for example, perhaps you come from the history of family, perhaps a family history, and we've all done that. Because even if you look at, for example, let's say, Tanya, you were talking about something before, but I could remember how crude I find some jokes now about men and women, or even the
Yeah.
words that they use for another, like even in Slovenian, like just the way they refer to one another. I find that so crude and so barbaric, and it is not something that I could ever even use anymore, because of this respect for my like inner masculine, inner
Yeah.
feminine, inner wholeness, and other people as well. And like what is the most surprising also was is how I can understand men, and I'm okay with them doing whatever they want to do and go on their own and do their manly thing, whatever. And then they come back in this joy, and it's not any, all of these nagging and anger and distrust. And so there's so much freedom in a relationship when, and there's just this warmth and this love and respect, and just allowing him to be, and express his own masculine, and him, and then reciprocating, in a similar way. It's just this most incredibly beautiful dance when you come out of that barbaric way of wounded relating to each other. There is just this beautiful dance of relating, of not only on the inside, but to other people. And like you said, also, you know, as perhaps like I mentioned a few times, that I work on a crisis phone line. So I speak with people who are just perhaps call in and say, well, I've just taken an overdose, or, you know, I'm just about contemplating suicide or something like this, or violent domestic violence. People are going through incredible hardships at the moment. So, but then they come and speak with someone who is joyful, and I don't hide my joy to anyone. And sometimes they're surprised, pleasantly surprised, you know, when they speak with someone on the phone, which is very, very in a different space. And perhaps it just gives them that light, enough light to say, wow, there are other possibilities. And then I also feel that some people have no intention of going into different spaces of themselves. And in the past, I would try to force, try to convince, and all of that is now gone. Is it not? Like, probably for you too,
Oh
Tanya? It's
yeah,
just like we
totally,
don't have,
completely gone.
it's just that compassion, allowing
Yeah.
people to be where they are. And if you, and it's the hardest thing with your loved ones, with your family, with your
Yeah, with
partners,
our
with your
children.
children. And for me, like, the way I look at it is, let's say there's a dark hole and they're in a dark hole, and I used to be like, that was what my experience, for example, with my mother. Like, my mother was also extremely hateful towards men and self-hateful, and so it was very much, we were in a dark hole, darkness. And then I started to climbing up, she also, and I started to climbing up and doing all the things that needed to be done to climb out of the hole. So now when I come across someone who is in that dark hole and they're lonely and they want someone else to come in, what does that mean? You have to become the same. You have to go into that dark hole. And you, like you, Tanya, said, you say, no, we can say, here is the ladder, and I give you enough light so you can start climbing up, but you have to choose. You keep choosing to keep climbing up, and I can't do it for you. I can't pull you out. You have to keep climbing up that ladder. And if they don't want to, you have to leave them. But that ladder
Yeah.
is always in that hole. Always. It is their choice whether they start climbing it or whether they just keep staying. And the thing is, they won't be lonely for a long time, because these people, it's the nature of this kind of energy to quickly find someone else. So if you actually leave that space, that dark hole, because you make other choices, but you still feel pulled back in because of guilt and shame and all of that, know that they're lonely, but they won't stay alone for a long time. They will quickly
Oh
find
no.
someone else.
Yeah.
And with you coming out of that hole, it has to do with self-respect, self-love, and just knowing that you're free. You're not a slave to them and to their choices anymore. You have a right to be free. You have a right to make your own choices that may be quite different than your whole ancestry, than your whole family. And yet, when you are then whole, you can really then shine light to everyone, and then they have that choice to either do the work, or they have the choice to keep playing for another lifetime. You know, that game of virus, that game of victimhood and abuse and all of that. But really, now it feels for me is like I'm anointed inside somehow with that sacred oil, that nothing can touch me, and all of these things. It just, I have absolutely no fear of talking to anyone and because, like, on that phone line, people that have the worst day of their life perhaps call in, and I speak to them, and there is no need to fear any of the energies, any of the places where they are at. And yes, it's not something I would want to do every day. I do it every couple of weeks, 3 short, stints, but it is nothing to fear. Like, you can walk into the hell, if there was one, which many people actually live in, but literally could walk there and not be touched by anything. And you don't even need a sword. I mean, need a sword for bullshit cutting
Yeah.
sword, but it's not like you need to arm yourself with like a knight. Nothing.
No, you
You're
don't need to
just a,
protect
that's
yourself.
right, you're just this gentle, open, flowing being. And it's just such a privilege and an incredible way to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's what we used to fear, the
Mm,
vulnerability that everyone talks about.
mm,
Vulnerability, funny thing, because it is actually the part that fears, that feels vulnerable and lives vulnerable, but then fears the other kind of what is called
mm,
vulnerability, but is not vulnerability, which is the openness. It's a completely different thing.
mm,
So being vulnerable has this connotation of being available to be hurt. And it's not that. Being vulnerable is being open to life, open to just shine, basically. And on that note, I just like to share that recently launched the conscious breath immersive experience called So It's Simple, created with Tom Lemo, who created the music for it. And we created everything together in a sense because somehow multidimensionally we were in the same space. And the interesting thing is that this creation, it is as amazing to us as it is to anyone who listens to it, really. But it comes at a time of precisely being able to open up to that vulnerable innocence of soul. And the vulnerable innocence of soul is not weak, it's not it's not available to be hurt or anything like that, and it's not childish. The vulnerable innocence of soul is wise, is so grateful and joyful that it can walk through any landscape unscathed. No, nothing will come to pass to it because of that innocence. That innocence just means beyond duality. That's
mm.
all.
That's
It
all, yeah.
That's what it means. And so we've brought this creation forth, and it's been such a joy because supposedly it is for a child's story, but it is not, because the child's story is something that touches everyone because it's about our inner landscape. And so also the different tracks, which are experiences in themselves, they've been touching people in such magical ways that just listening, just being exposed to that, sort of somehow with a click shifts something inside.
Mm,
And that's the level of possibility here now, is that just opening up, becoming vulnerable to whatever it is, in this case becoming vulnerable to these energies that are brought through the music, through the voice, through
mm,
the invitation, the frequency, it just allows for the shifts. And so in the same way as someone that chooses to call this helpline, where you're picking up the phone, these people somehow at some level have this intuition that, they're just being exposed to your presence will have some sort of an effect. And the effect can be total denial, and therefore going back into further recesses of darkness, or it can be opening up a bit more. It can be one way or the other. Actually, it's not like we can't make those choices.
no.
Only each one is there to make the choices. So
Mm,
yeah, thank you for adding that. That was really relevant.
mm. Yeah, and we just keep dancing with all the creations, and it's just beautiful how they keep coming up and coming up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
new things, and it's always being stretched in a new way, isn't it? Like, and even
Yes.
the same things are in a new way. Like at the moment I'm in a 3 months class at Essence, which is about fourth year now, around Christmas time. Because it's so relevant because it's with Yeshua and Mary that are
Mm-hmm.
running it, and it's always a beautiful group, and it's always new and different, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
even
It's
when
always,
you
all the time.
always, yeah, and it depends
Yeah.
on the people that are part, and it depends on the
Yes.
person of who I am at the time.
It
And
is.
so it's really weird how even looking back at what we've brought out, like sometimes I look at something I've written, 4, 5, 6 years ago, and I'm like, wow, when I was in that soul space, it's completely timeless and completely
Yes.
relevant
Yes.
to now.
Totally.
And then at the same time, some other things is like, oh my gosh, I was a different person then, I'm not that person anymore, and I can
Yeah.
even be thinking of it quite differently. So like it's a real, you have to take yourself as whole, as changeable, and nothing is that's what one thing I also wanted to mention. um with relating, I found that now I ask myself now, how do I want to relate? And that comes with being, after the menopause, being a more free woman, and I'm not married, I'm single in this way. And for me now, I want to relate because I feel myself as timeless, as eternal. So for me, there it doesn't exist till death do us part. So that
Mm.
I've had to let go of. So for me now, for example, oh, I'm going to get married until I die, it's very meaningless. And at the same time, I recognize that some people, that's what they choose. Well, we are going to be next few decades, while we're still this lifetime, we're going to be together. So I'm also open to that. If it happens, it happens. But what I'm saying is that we have to keep, when you have presence of the soul, which is timeless and eternal, it like all of these things that used to be rules and regulations, and you could be killed for it. For example, if you said, oh, I'm not going to be married forever, um, you could be killed for it in the old days. But now it, like, you have to really ask yourself how you want to relate. And that is, I find, the incredible freedom if you find another person who is also quite open to this. And then, like, for example, this relationship that I just had was based on that. And when the time came, and the reason why the time came to part in this way was because he didn't change as much as I did. Like,
Mm.
I keep changing, and I keep changing. And so if you're not, if you come, if the other partner is not in that way, doesn't mean it's bad, or it just comes to the end. And what I thought, well, how is this, like, how when we go into these new things, I was wondering before it happened, and I felt it coming to an end, is like, wow, is it really going to hurt him? But the most amazing thing is that actually it happened for both of us. So again, when you work with the soul, it's not that the other person then gets hurt or have to deal with it in the old way. It just develops in this most beautiful way. And so that the party also is beautiful and sacred, rather than some kind of, and it didn't come to some kind of, oh, because it's finishing, we're now going to have to go through fighting and battling. None of that, none of that.
Yeah.
And we entered in that, in like, and this is where also I find that it's so good to be whole, meaning that I have integrated masculine, I have integrated feminine, because I know how to look after my stuff. So I don't need someone to come and, oh, now you do this, like, I still look after my car and take it to the mechanics or whatever needs to be, it's not like, oh, now that, okay, of course there are some things that a male can do, a female can do better, or male can do better, or personally I can do some things the other person, perhaps doesn't, and vice versa. So, but it's just a very beautiful dance as to how it's not like, okay, so now that I'm in a relationship, I don't have to cut my lawn, blah blah, none of that. It's just like, okay, whoever chooses, or in that moment, chooses to do that, they then look after, but it's not divided in any, this is feminine, this is masculine job, none of that. And we like it. I dislike that kind of world where there are these kind of rigid rules, and so in this way now I find that this world that we are creating, co-creating, is so much more suited to who I've always been. But it's now just allowing myself to really express it in all these different ways. And again, it doesn't mean that everyone else is going to think that way, not at all, because it has to do with being unique and being your own person. And for someone, that means that, okay, yeah, I promised myself to another, and I'm going to work on that. And it's absolutely beautiful. There's nothing wrong. It's just this being in a world where uniqueness is celebrated, and that's what I love about these times. And so I see these times in such a beautiful way. Like, people say, oh, what a horrible times. But I actually see all this newness and how people are relating and how people are more and more free. So I don't know, where is that darkness?
Yeah,
Where is that
true.
darkness? Even in people that are still in mass consciousness, like, and when you see people struggling, I can see that what the underlying theme is of that struggle. And it always is this kind of freedom and uniqueness and being closer to what they feel they, should be, which is the soul. So it's quite incredible. But anyway, we're almost 2 hours. So
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so
So I'm
thank you.
not gonna add anything because we're almost 2 hours, and yeah, and wow, it's been wonderful, and I would have a lot to add now, but I'm not going to. We'll leave it for next time.
Go until we could go for like a couple more hours, couldn't we?
Yes, we could. We could. Definitely. Definitely. Oh my God. Thank you all so much for being here with us, for playing with us. And thank you, Alexis, again. I was missing our chat. Like it was longer because the other month it was at the beginning. And so it was longer. It's like, I love it so much.
It felt like, to me, like centuries had passed. It was like,
Yes.
when this morning when I woke up and he's like, oh, wow, we got a thing with Tanya on. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, it feels like we haven't chatted.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this way. But
So good.
yeah. And then next month we have a celebration. Our theme is celebration, isn't it? Something.
Yes.
So because of
On the
Christmas.
17th. We're going up on the 17th,
Yeah.
celebrating it all.
Yeah. Oh gosh, now we go and experience that so we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yoo-hoo!
Okay, thank you to you, dear Tanya, and thank you to
Thank
each
you.
one participating.